Hello and welcome everyone on this Azure AZ-204 session. And I welcome all the participants, all those who joined as of now. So today what we are going to do, we are going to start a new series of AZ-204, which is a certification based track for Microsoft Azure course, specifically for developer. Prior to this series, we have conducted sessions on several different tracks like AZ-900. We started with the fundamental AZ-900, then we moved to AZ-104. That was our administration track. Then we conducted AZ-400. That was a track for all the DevOps people. And now, today we are going to start our next session that is on AZ-204. Which is developing solution for Microsoft Azure. Today, this would be a first session for our 204. And in today's sessions, what we are going to do, we are going to cover our first session that would be based on compute solutions. And this session would be divided in two parts, that is part 1 and part 2, because this has a lot of topics to be covered. So we divided this session in two parts. Today, this would be our part 1. And before we start this session, let me Ashish, please move on to the next slide. So before we start this session, let me introduce the speaker for all those people who would be conducting the sessions and would be helping to deliver the session directly or indirectly, like building sessions, building content, arranging the sessions, labs, and all those things. So myself, Vipin Jha, I'm MCT and consultant for Azure. Then we have Ram Murthy in our core team. He is also Azure architect and MCT. Then we have Ashish Raj. So Ashish is a DevOps architect and he is an MCT as well. He would be our primary speaker for today's session. Then we have Shri in our core team, Azure top core team, who is a cloud solution specialist. Then we have Sanjeev Panighari. Sanjeev is also helping us delivering this AZ-204, and he was a part of the speaker for DevOps series that we have conducted. That was our previous session. Then Nitanshu, who helped us in several aspects related to building sessions, building some labs, and he was a speaker in our previous session as well. Then Kirtika is also a cloud engineer who helps in building the sessions. Arun Pachehra, he is MCT and cloud architect, and he would also be a speaker for this AZ-204 session. And going forward, post introduction of this Azure Talk Core team, let me introduce the speaker for today's session. So today we have two speakers. Our first speaker would be Ashish Raj, who is a co-founder of this Azure Easy community channel, and he's a DevOps architect. Then we have Arun Pachehra, who will help us showing you the lab and the demonstration for today's session. Ashish, move on to the next slide. Now, for all these sessions, we have some special goodies for the participants who attend these sessions. And what are those? So if you attend these sessions, post the sessions, we have some quiz. And if you participate in those quiz sessions, we have 6 selected participants who can win the exam vouchers. Now, to win this exam voucher, you need to register for all the sessions on Eventbrite. For example, like for this AZ-204, we have 7 sessions. So you need to register all those sessions. And once you are registered and you appear for the quiz, in every subsequent sessions, we will, like for today's session, we will announce a winner in the next sessions. So we announced 6 winner for this exam voucher. Along with that, we also give one hard copy of one book, that is the Demystifying Azure DevOps series. This is a DevOps specific book and authored by our speaker Ashish Raj. Ashish, move on to this thing. But okay, so I've already said like you must be registered on Eventbrite to win this exam voucher, and we will be announcing this winner in this thing. Now, from this particular slide, I let me welcome Ashish Raj, who will help you on this particular certification path, and he will carry on this session.
Thanks, Vipin. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So, as Vipin said, we are launching our free training series on this particular certification track starting today. So, today we are going to take first part of compute services. The modules that we are going to cover for this exam. But before we continue, I'll just walk through the certification path for this particular exam that we are discussing today. So this exam is known as AZ-204. So having this exam cleared, it gets you the certificate. So the certificate is as you may know that some of the certificates in Azure are based on multiple exams, but this particular certificate is based on one exam only. So as soon as you clear AZ-204, you are a Azure Developer Associate certified by Microsoft. So that is the certification exam path for this particular training that we are conducting. Now, when you go through this training, and over the next few months, we will be going through the complete syllabus of this particular training. We will be covering various modules which are part of the official curriculum of this exam. So there are multiple modules which carries a different proportionate of questions in the exam, and we will be covering all the different modules in upcoming sessions. So as Vipin has said, we are going to cover the first module today, and this first module we have divided in two parts. So first part we are covering today. In the next session, which is already listed on Eventbrite, we will be covering the second part of the same module, that is compute solutions. So we will soon talk about the agenda, where we will be telling what exactly the things we are going to cover today from this module. So from this module, we are going to cover the virtual machine discussion. How do you configure virtual machine? What are the configurations you have? How what exactly things are there for your for your day-to-day development activity that you will be doing with virtual machine in Azure. We will be touch base upon ARM template. So ARM template is one of the a way to deploy your resources in Azure. So we'll be discussing about what are the various things that you must know from the virtual machine point of view. Then we will be talking about app service. Azure App Service is another hosting environment that is used for hosting the web application specific workload. We'll be talking about the that particular service or resource. How does it make sense for? I mean, what are the various options you have as a developer, and what are the various things you need to make sure when you are using this service. Now, let's go to the first part, which is virtual machine. So virtual machine, before we jump to the virtual machine, we would like to discuss this one of the most important aspect of cloud. Irrespective of which cloud you are working with, you must be going through this particular discussion when you are starting your journey in any cloud. And the same is for Azure. So when you are talking about services in Azure, such as web app, virtual machine, some of the things you have seen on the agenda, these services, various services aligns with one of the section of these three words. It can be IaaS, it can be PaaS. We will be, just going through these acronyms, what exactly they mean and what exactly, they mean from the service point of view. And then, SaaS. So we normally categorize services in one of these, category. Like, is it a IaaS solutions? Is it a PaaS solution, or is it a SaaS solution? Now, what do we mean by IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS? When you use cloud, any cloud, and right now we'll be talking about Azure, then there are two aspects that comes into picture. Whether what are the things you are going to manage, and what are the things cloud provider is going to manage. As before cloud, we have already been using various services provided by IT infrastructure team of our company, of our organization, and that was, or that is called on premises. It is nowadays, it is on premises workloads are also going into the transformation, and we will be talking about what exactly private cloud is. But if at all you are handling everything, then it is on premises. Whether it is a cloud or whether it is not a cloud, whether it is a legacy infrastructure, that is a different thing altogether. As a developer, you might be knowing that, okay, these are the services which are running from our company, so this is an on-premises service. But with the evaluation of cloud, the first thing which came into picture was infrastructure as a service, which is the first acronym, IaaS. Now, infrastructure as a service, as you can see, the blue boxes, they become cloud provider responsibility, and that's how it makes the difference. Earlier, when before cloud, when your company was having these services, they were your company was managing the compute, network, storage. Essentially, if you try to brief it up, it is your hardware. So hardware, the server, the bare metal server, and then on top of it, the virtualization layer on which you can create the virtual machine. All these things were covered by the company itself, and then on top of it, you are doing, you are creating virtual machine, and then you are probably your IT infrastructure team will be creating the virtual machine, and probably they will be giving you all the specific things that you may need to run your application. So for example, if you want to run your .NET application, then you might want them to install operating system which is Windows, and you might be asking them that you must be having the the runtime such as .NET framework. You must be having Windows operating system. You must be having some applications so that your application, actually your .NET application, then it is a a .NET application. If it is something else, a Java application, then maybe a Java APK, or sorry, the jar file, or in case of .NET, it will be some exe or MSI, so or DLL files in case of libraries. So you must be having your application, and then probably you must be having some data access layer as well, in terms of your store, data, that is SQL, or some some data on the disk and all those things. So you are covering all these green boxes. You, as in your company, that is some a few of the things, maybe it is IT infrastructure team within your company, and some of the things as a developer you might be developing or you might be managing, and these blue boxes are taken care by the cloud provider. And that's if at all you are using a service from a cloud, and if you see that this is the pattern of that cloud service, which is case for virtual machine, you call that particular service as a IaaS service. That's how it relates. So when you start using a service, you must be getting a category where you will say that, okay, this is a IaaS service, or this is a PaaS service. Now, what exactly a PaaS service is? Now, in case of PaaS service, cloud provider goes little bit ahead, and they say that you don't have to worry about virtual machine, you don't have to worry about operating system, and you don't have to worry about runtime. So what do you mean by that is that when you talk about virtual machine, you must be telling that whether it is a Windows virtual machine, whether it is a Linux virtual machine, what version of Windows it is it a data center version, is it a Windows Server 2019, is it a 2016, or whatsoever. In case of Linux, whether it is a Ubuntu flavor or whether it is some other flavor which is available on Azure. So there are various virtual machine operating system versions which are available on the marketplace. When you try to create your virtual machine, you get the options there, and you will be selecting that. So you are responsible for the operating system, you are responsible for the virtual machine, you are creating that virtual machine, you are managing, you are making sure that it is up to date in terms of the operating system, in terms of the runtime such as .NET framework or Java framework or whatsoever it is, then it is a IaaS service. Similarly, you go forward into the platform service, then you get rid of this responsibility. Your cloud provider such as Azure will take care of it. One of the PaaS service that we are going to talk about is Azure Web App Service. In the later section, in the last module that we have in today's agenda, where we will be talking about Azure Web App Service, which falls under this. When you create an app service, you don't care. You don't care that what is happening on the operating system level. You might be telling that, okay, this is the, when you are developing an application, you must be taking a platform based on which you have, your application will be working. You will just tell that this is a Windows based application, it is a Linux based application. What version of Linux being installed, how it is updated, what is the frequency of the updates on the operating system level or on the runtime level or on the virtual machine level, like what exactly the virtualization technique is being used, Hyper-V, VMware or whatsoever. You don't care because it is blue. That means your cloud provider, which is Azure, is taking care of it, and that's how your responsibility gets reduced. And that's how when you take a IaaS based service, you have still some responsibility. When you mature your service to start using some of the platform as a service solutions, then you start reducing your responsibility as your company responsibility, and then it becomes a responsibility of your cloud provider. And if at all you mature ahead, your service mature ahead, your organization cloud adoption matures, then you go into the software as a service model, where all you care about your data and access. You don't care what application, what version of application, is it updated, is it secure. All those things will be monitored, maintained, and will be made sure by the cloud providers such as Azure, and that's how it becomes a very true cloud service solution. But yes, to be here, it is a journey you start. Company will always start with this particular adoption. They first try to make use of certain solutions which are already running on VMs, and then they will first try this approach, then slowly they will migrate into PaaS, and then in the current scenario the maturity is somewhere between here and here. Software as a service, still a product-based solution, where if at all you're selling your solution, then only you go into that particular approach, such as Office 365. You have a solution like Office 365, you want to sell the subscription to your users, that is an example of software as a service uses. Now, in our upcoming sections, we will keep on expanding these details in upcoming modules. Right now, most of the discussions will be coming into this infrastructure as a service in today's discussion. Then going forward, we will also start exploring this platform as a service, and then in the later section, we will be touch base upon software as a service aspect as a developer. Now let's talk about virtual machine. Now, as we know now, virtual machine is a infrastructure as a service solution. That means you manage everything above virtualization. What do you mean by that? It means that whenever you deploy a virtual machine, it must be deployed on a hardware, right? On the hardware, you have the networking, the physical network, the security networking layer of the data center. On top of it, you have some hypervisor, virtualization technique. Hypervisor is like, it may be Hyper-V, it may be VMware. It essentially what it does is that you have the hardware of one server, 32 core. It will be able to give you the option where you can divide these 32 core into 4 core CPU, and then you can actually create a VM based on these cores. And this is what happens. This has been happening in the on-prem world. You buy a bulky hardware, a server from some of the vendor, and then you install a hypervisor, which is VMware solution, or it may be a Hyper-V from, for example, from Microsoft. It is Hyper-V. You install it, and using that, you divide that particular hardware into small chunk, and that is what you call virtual machine. Right? Now this, till this level it is taken care. So you don't really have to worry about Hyper-V, you don't really have to worry about hardware, you don't really have to worry about dividing these components. As soon as you go to portal, as soon as you go to the portal, let me clean this up. Yeah, as soon as you go to the portal, you kind of select the virtual machine, and then it will create the virtual machine for you based on the configuration you are selecting. Now, as soon as you have the virtual machine, as a developer, you don't really have to worry about managing that. You can automate the overall deployment of your solution using one of the example we are showing on the screen, where you can, without going into the complications of going into the files and folders, or virtual machine and all those things that typically infrastructure engineers do. Now this is what the magic is happening from the cloud point of view, that you can automate the entire workflow using some of the services we have listed here. Azure DevOps, you have been already using Visual Studio, so you can do the complete DevOps on a virtual machine, and you just take care about your code. You are updating your code, you are making sure you are updating in repository, you have the pipeline to take care to deploy into the virtual machine, and now virtual machine is already configured, which will be configured by your IT infrastructure team probably. As a developer, you might not, during that learning, during the the lab test and all, you might be creating some virtual machine. You must be aware of the virtual machine concept, but from the real time scenario, this virtual machine might be getting created by infrastructure engineers, Azure administrators, and then they just provide you the endpoint where you need to publish your application. Now, as soon as you publish your application, it is loaded. People can use it. If at all it is an internet application, then people can use it from internet. If it is a application from the internal application, then probably internal users can use it. But essentially, this particular virtual machine, it does not need any hardware on yours, on your premises. What does it mean? That from the cloud adoption point of view, that as soon as you need a typical, a particular configuration where you can host your application, you can request your administrator to create that. They don't really have to worry about buying some hardware, setting up the infrastructure, which used to happen in our previous on-premises world, right? On-premises, you have the hardware, you have the limitation on the hardware. If at all the hardware is not having the sufficient spaces, then either they, the infrastructure engineer has to clean it up, or they have to buy new hardware so that they can give you some space over there. But in case of Azure or in case of cloud, it is on demand. You are creating your virtual machine, you are working on it. As soon as you are done, you destroy that, you don't need it. And you can actually automate that aspect as well. During the Azure ARM template discussion, we'll be talking about that. But for the time being, the overall objective is that virtual machine, eases your uses of compute in cloud. In cloud, you don't really have to worry about whether it is on, whether the hardware is available, how the networking scheme is there. All those things are very, just one click away. Now, apart from this DevOps implementation, it is very, very useful for lift and shift model of migration. So you might have heard of this particular word. When you kind of deploy your application on the, when a cloud adoption discussion starts, this is the word which comes in the very first discussion. What does it mean? That whatever you have on premises, without refactoring its architecture, without refactoring its code, without doing any changes the way application has been developed or architected, you have to just move it on the cloud. The benefit you are getting over here is that you no need to manage the hardware needed for that application, and that's how lift and shift model helps you reduce the cost from the organization point of view. So this is the first, very first step that happens, and virtual machine is very, very nice service, or the one of the best service to pick if you are talking about lift and shift. Because essentially, if you talk about virtual machine, it's just a virtual machine. It's just that earlier it was running on your data center in your on premises world. Now it is running on Azure data center, which is Microsoft server space. You have the same options. You can do the RDP, you can configure, you can install services, you can configure the operating system, you can customize the operating system. Everything is same, right? That's why this is the first choice in case of lift and shift discussion, where you don't really have to plan so many changes in your application from the architectural point of view or from the development point of view. It is available in various sizes. What do you mean by that is that when you deploy your service, when you deploy your service on premises, which is, if your infrastructure is being hosted by your company, then as I said, the company has a limitation, right? They have 4 servers, 32 core, right? 32 core multiplied by 4, that's your limitation. You cannot go beyond that compute. It is, very much known, right? If at all you want to go beyond that, you have to get the approval, you have to talk to your finance, you have to talk to your organization about approval. So it is a investment kind of thing, right? You have to invest in the hardware, then only you can get that particular thing. But in case of cloud, it is just a click away. You just select that particular size. There are various sizes available, various different sizes of virtual machines are available, starting from very low compute to a very high compute requirement, where you can run your machine learning or deep learning kind of workloads, which requires a lot of specific hardware, specific high compute power. All those things are available there, where irrespective of you don't really have to buy any hardware for that, and that's the use of the cloud service. Now, as soon as your use case is done, you just destroy that virtual machine, and then you don't worry about cost, right? So there is no upfront cost, right? You don't really have to think about upfront cost. It is a pay as you go model. That is what the cloud is. The moment you are using it, you are paying for it. You don't use it, you don't pay. But in case of on-prem, that is not the case, right? High availability. That is one of the very uh, critical thing in any workload which is running on the infrastructure. If at all you want to maintain the high availability, and if it is hosted on your on-premises system, on-premises infrastructure such as Hyper-V or VMware, it is, you have to do a lot of, first of all, you have to invest a lot, right? For example, you want a availability of your solution at least in 3 regions or 3 countries, right? You suppose you have a application which is mostly used by employees and or your customer in US, customer in India, and customer in Germany or Europe, any other country. Then you have to have the data center in each region if you are talking about on premises, and that involves upfront cost, right? You have to deploy your offices there. You have to get the very much specialized facilities where you can host your infrastructure. So all those things are upfront cost. In case of Azure, it's just architecture. You need to make sure you are architecting well. There are various options when you talk about virtual machine configuration. We'll be soon talking about certain things. When you configure your virtual machine, you take care of those configurations properly, and then it's all about using those configurations and deploying your virtual machine in a way it will be highly available. You don't really have to make any kind of investment for any special high availability option. And in addition to that, as you know, this is one of the very minimal requirement we have discussed about high availability. But it might be the case when we are talking about high availability, it might be a case that what happens is that you have global applications such as Amazon, Facebook. Those applications, do not have any restriction in terms of countries. They are being used in multiple countries, and
So
you can,
Ashish,
yeah.
so I think with respect to the virtual machine high availability, I think you are highlighting like high availability of virtual machines in within a data center and between the regions, right? Like if we have any workload running on virtual machines and we are deploying that workload on multiple machines, so machine should be available if any VM failed within the data center or in different data centers, right?
Yes, yes.
Right. Okay. So here we are talking about the high availability with respect to the virtual machine. So if one machine gets fails, so like with the availability zone or availability set, we have a high availability option so that we can make our VM highly available. If one machine goes fail, we have workload running on different machines. That could be in a same data center and in a different data centers as well, right?
Right, right. So yes, and along with that, you have this auto scale feature. Auto scale is like, again, if you want to implement auto scale in addition to high availability, there are different use cases of high availability as discussed by Vipin. When you want to implement auto scale, it's again another investment and lot of consideration you have to make, because many of the legacy, or you say traditional on-premises infrastructure solutions do not really help you much in terms of auto scale of your application. As soon as your application requirement is increasing, it should automatically increase the resources, it should automatically increase the RAM, it should automatically increase the the CPU, or it can automatically burst out in terms of number of incidents. So you have one virtual machine, all of a sudden the requirement is coming in a way that it needs at least 3 virtual machines to meet the requirement, to meet the user request. Then it will automatically create those 3 instances, and then users will not see any slow response or something like that. It will all automated. All those things are possible with the cloud services such as Azure Virtual Machine, but it's very difficult to implement in case of on-premises infrastructure. And that's where a new discussion is coming into picture, where people are customizing those on-premises solutions or reinventing those on-premises solutions to include these characteristics such as auto scaling and all, and that's what they are calling private cloud. So private cloud is nothing but on-premises implementation of the characteristic that you can find in cloud. Now we are not talking about in detail of private cloud, but yeah, this is what if you have the characteristic of high availability, auto scale and all those things in your on-premises infrastructure, you can call it a private cloud, and that's what many companies are providing you. Now, when you deploy your virtual machine, in Azure, you will see some interface like that. When you go towards, when you are going into this particular interface, there are certain main things or checklist you have to have in your mind before you deploy your virtual machine, and most probably during the deployment of a production workload. So as a developer, you might not be deploying the virtual machine as such in your day-to-day activity. You will be consuming it for implementing your services, connecting to it, and then deploying your services, connecting to it, and then making sure your applications are running and all. That might be one of the use case from day-to-day activity. But when you talk about these checklists are important for developer to understand, so that they can provide a correct or the right information to the infrastructure teams or infrastructure engineers, so that they can deploy a virtual machine that meets your requirement. Now, what are those checklists? The first thing is naming convention. During your dev test or during your learning, you can deploy a virtual machine called my VM, Ashish VM, or whatsoever. I mean, it is there is no context to it. There is no problem in it. Microsoft is not going to raise any question on it, and it will deploy. But when you are talking about implementing a solution in production, you must be you must have some naming convention in your organization you should be abide by, and that the same thing applies to Azure Virtual Machine as well. So you must be going through the naming convention of your organization. They must be having some naming convention which explains what is the use of this server, what region it is, what project is going to use. Those the naming convention will involve all those things, and that is something you need to plan properly along with your architects, along with your infrastructure engineers, and of course developer will have a appropriate say in it, because they are the people who are going to use this service and after the deployment. So they should be aware that why this naming convention is being used. Is it a prod VM? Is it a QA VM? Is it a dev VM? Those kind of things, or what region and all. When you deploy a virtual machine, then one of the when Arun will be showing the demo, he will be showing you there is an option whether you deploy it through portal or some other medium like CLI or all. You must be defining a location for your virtual machine, and this particular location thing is quite usual for any kind of service that you deploy. So whenever you deploy a service, including VM, including virtual machine in Azure, you must be deploying it in one of the location which is being hosted by Microsoft, right? So it is being deployed in some data center. Of course, earlier this was deployed on premises. Now this particular thing is being used by Microsoft. I mean, is using a Microsoft provided hardware data center, right? Now this hardware, this data center must be somewhere in the world, in India, in Europe, in in United States, anywhere. Based on these locations, Microsoft has something called region. Now this is the region what we are going to define when we select the location. So when you select the location, it will come up as a drop down in case of Power Portal, and it will say Central India, South India. Similarly, if you are talking about United States, Central US, East US 2, West US 2, South Central US, something like that. You need to select that location. Now when you are selecting that location, the most important point of selecting the location is that where exactly this service will be consumed. So suppose your application will be used by most of the users who are in India, then probably you should be selecting a location which is coming from India, Central India or South India or something like that. Similarly, even though you are deploying from it, you are deploying, you are sitting here in India, but you think that this service will be mostly used by people who are in East US region, right? I mean those coastal region. Then you will be selecting East US so that it will be near to a East US data center. So hardware will be near to East US data center. So anyone who is using that service from East US, they will be aware. I mean they will be getting a bandwidth, optimization from the Azure or from the Microsoft itself, and that is how you will be benefiting the global availability or the global presence of Azure, which is quite difficult if you are talking about on-premises. You cannot have your presence across the world what you have with Microsoft. So Microsoft has global presence, and you can make use of that global presence when you are using this location. Size, of course, when you are deploying your virtual machine, you must be having a clear understanding that what exactly the resource need of this service. So when you are deploying a web app or a web application on this VM, then you must be having some idea that this particular web application will be used by these number of users, right? And these number of users converts back to this much CPU and this much RAM. Is it a memory intensive workload? Is it like going to use a lot of memory? Is it a CPU intensive workload? Is it going to do a lot of execution, like some job or something? So those considerations will decide what size you are going to select. Size is like, that what is the hardware you are going to get from Microsoft in terms of CPU and RAM. When you go to the size, you will get a lot of options. You need to select one of the options. Now, what option you are going to select? During your learning, You definitely can select any one of the option, and if you have appropriate credit, if you have appropriate credit in your Azure, then you will be able to deploy that. But when you are talking about production, you have to have that consideration in your mind that what size is best for you, so that you don't pay more, you don't pay less, and you don't really select a less resource, in terms of your application, so that your users will always get errors, your users will always get performance issues with your application. Or you're not selecting a oversized resource, that is like, suppose your application is okay with 4 CPU and 2 GB RAM, or maybe 4 GB RAM, but you are, just to be on safer side, you thought of, okay, let's go ahead and download create a virtual machine with 16 CPU and 32 GB RAM or something like that. Now you are paying more to Azure, because that is not you are going to use ever. So those considerations must be taken care when you are talking about size. It's not like any size you can select. Of course, operating system. As we know, operating system is something you are going to take care going forward. When you are deploying your virtual machine, you need to select the operating system, because you know that what application you are going to deploy. Suppose your application is based on .NET, which can be deployed on an IIS server. Then probably you are talking about virtual machine, which is based on Unix. But suppose your application is developed in mean stack, right? MongoDB and Angular and all those, that particular stack you have. Now that can be deployed on a Linux VM. Now you need a Linux VM for that, so that is a Linux operating system. You need to select that particular operating system which can support that particular stack that you have developed. So operating, and then going forward, you are going to maintain that in terms of virtual machine. You are going to take care of the virtual machine, the operating system updates, operating system configuration, and all those things. And then the configuration and runtime. So when you deploy your virtual machine, there are a lot of configurations which you can customize. For example, you can add some extensions so that some of the services can be installed as a part of deployment. You can run a script on the virtual machine during the deployment, or after the deployment, you can install your additional software. For example, your application needs a runtime such as Java runtime, right? So Java runtime will not be coming by default in Windows operating system. So for that, you need to install Java runtime after downloading it, the respective version. Similarly, you might need a Python version, right? Windows does not come up with a Python installed library. So you may have to install those runtimes. You may have to configure those runtimes the way it can work with your application. So what are those things which your application needs in terms of virtual machine? Those considerations must be taken care. And actually, as we said, this is most appropriate for lift and shift model. And all these considerations, as a developer or as an infrastructure engineer, you have already been discussing, because virtual machine deployment is not a new thing, whether it is cloud or on-prem. You have been already discussing. The only thing which is changing here is that because this virtual machine is not hosted on a typical on-premises old system, it is being hosted out of the box solution by Microsoft. It can give you some of the additional advantages, such as you can do the CI/CD very efficiently, you can do the monitoring very efficiently, all those things. But to make use of it, you have to configure those things properly, and that are the things that comes under configuration and runtime. The last thing which comes into the part, which is networking. So when you create a virtual machine, and if this virtual machine is not supposed to be exposed to external user, which is the case in most of the organization, right? In most of the organization, you don't really use virtual machine on a internet, right? So you have to take consideration that you are not attaching any public IP with your virtual machine. If at all you are attaching a public IP, you are filtering your traffic properly using proper NSG rule, that is called network security group. We will be talking about those things, when we will be explaining the networking aspect. But more or less, that is more, more into the administrator that takes care of it. But as a developer, you must be aware that if you have a specific network need, you have to communicate to your administrator, Azure infrastructure team, that these are the ports or these are the traffic must be whitelisted because these are the network component is being used by my application. So suppose your application is accessing a particular port on a third party application or on a third party network, you need to make sure that you are making those consideration while you are putting your request or explain asking infrastructure team to make those consideration when they are deploying this. Now, talking about deployment, you can deploy your virtual machine using portal. We have already seen that interface on the previous slide. If ever you have done any deployment on Azure, you must be familiar with this portal. And in our, the later section, Arun will be going through that portal demonstration or how to use the portal, and probably he will be deploying virtual machine. Then he will be explaining some of the most important aspect of virtual machine. But you can deploy using portal, that is we are going to demonstrate. You can also use ARM template. That is our next section in this module. We'll be talking about what exactly ARM template, Azure Resource Manager template, and why exactly we need to talk about it. We'll be talking about those concepts, why and how, and who exactly takes care of that particular thing. But you can deploy apart from portal, you can deploy using this interface, that is ARM template. Another thing you can use is PowerShell. Again, this is, if you talk about day-to-day activity, it is more aligned to infrastructure engineers' day-to-day job. But at the same time, as a developer, you must be aware of these, options. That these are the options you have from the, from the tools point of view. You have portal, you have ARM template, you have PowerShell, and the last thing which you have is Azure CLI. Now, Azure CLI is again one of the another command line tool from Microsoft, which can be used to deploy resources in Azure. When you talk about deployment, this is what happens. You can use any one of these, services, tools to deploy or to communicate to Azure Resource Manager. Azure Resource Manager is nothing but an API. So this is an API where you can use either of these tools, CLI, PowerShell, you can do the REST API call, or you can use the Azure portal. And then you can put your request here, in respective format. As soon as you put the request, the Azure Resource Manager has the internal implementation, which is an API. I mean, it is just like any other REST API. So it understands if you are providing a proper format that is defined, then it will be able to kind of internally understand and internally talk that, okay, the user is talking about networking, the user is talking about storage account, the user is talking about virtual machine, the user is talking about any other service in Azure, and then they have the way to understand how to make sure that what user is asking, we have to complete that. Talking about creating the virtual machine, talking about configuring the virtual machine, talking about updating the virtual machine with the updated configuration such as size of the virtual machine. All those things will be possible using these different tools that you have on Azure. We'll be talking about some of the tools during the demo, of the upcoming sessions. In upcoming sessions, we'll be, in all the sessions, we will be having the second part where we'll be deploying certain solutions in Azure. So we will try to use these different tools in different demonstrations so that you can get the understanding of all these tools in a particular demonstration. Now, talking about networking of virtual machine, which is very important from the application point of view. when you develop your application and when you deploy your application, then it must be, consumed by some user. And when users consumes it, or even you connect to this application, the networking becomes a very integral part of your solution. Because if the application is not reachable, then what is the use of those virtual machines with whatever the configuration or whatever the size of the virtual machine you have configured? So what networking, you have to do little bit more consideration or a little bit more understanding. Uh, Talking about day-to-day activity, of course, it is more or less administrator oriented task. It is not a developer who is going to configure the network on the Azure. I mean, just to clear this thing, you are if you are in a developer role, you are not going to configure the network for Azure. But at the same time, you should be aware that what are the common terms are available, common services are available, which can enable or which can give you those different aspects of networks that you need to get the networking established, get the network related features that your application may need. The first thing you will experience that if your organization is right now using on-premises infrastructure, they are not yet on cloud, and if you just deployed a VM in Azure, then the first thing you will be doing is you must be having a virtual network in a VM. I mean, in Azure. We will be talking about virtual network in detail, but essentially what it is that your on-premises is a separate network. It is like your home network. You have your home network. This network is your office network. This virtual network, think of it like an office network. Now, if at all you want to access something on office network, now your work from home is going on, and you must have seen that some of the resources you cannot access without having a VPN connection. So this is the aspect you will be, you should be knowing that if your service is deployed in Azure, okay, and if it is not exposed over internet, then wherever you are, you must be having a connection established to that network that is in Azure, so that you can actually establish that communication. Now that communication is established by one of the service which is called VPN, without exposing this network on the internet, because typically this on premises or your home network will be connected to internet. I mean, not in the office or on premises, but if you think of it like your home network, then it is your home network which has its own boundary. Now you can go to internet, but you cannot go inside your office network without having a bridge, and that bridge is called your VPN. And that's what you must be aware, that if your application is not exposed to public network, and if one of the if your code is accessing one of the service which is sitting inside a virtual network in cloud or in somewhere else, or vice versa, if your application is hosted on VM, okay, but one of the data, the SQL database is hosted on premises. Now to make sure that these people can talk to each other, you have to have a connectivity between them. Now VPN is one of the ways. There are various ways, but there are, this is one of the way. There are many other ways which infrastructure administrators are aware of and should be aware of, but VPN is one of the way which is most relevant from the developer point of view. That is unique. The another thing you must be using, which is RDP or SSH. So RDP is something where if your VM is connected, I mean, if your VM is deployed based on Windows, right? If it is a Windows VM, then probably you will be, connecting using RDP. But if it is a Linux VM, then probably you will be using SSH. That's the difference. So if you have deployed a Windows VM and you want to go inside that VM, and network has been already established, right? This VPN is already established. You have made sure that you have the connectivity, whether VPN or there is something else called. We will be talking about that particular thing in in next point. But there are some other ways also. Without having to have VPN connectivity, you can still connect to this VM. That is called public IP. I'm not sure if it is there. If it will be there, then we'll be talking about it. But suppose your VM has a public IP, that means it is available on internet. Public means internet. Now you don't need this bridge because this public IP is already on the internet. You just go there, take a RDP software such as Windows Desktop Connection Manager or RDP Connection Manager or something like that, and you enter your IP, and then it will connect you with the VM. So this connectivity you should be aware. RDP is available for Windows based operating system. SSH is available for Linux based virtual machines. NIC card is one of the things which, when you create an IP, when you have an IP address, VM internally creates a NIC card. This is again, if you are talking about how much relevant it is from the developer point of view, I would say, you should be aware of this information, that any IP you create and when you associate with VM, it gets associated with NIC card. So you have this VM has a NIC card, and this NIC card has IPs. So IPs are not directly part of VM. VM, gets connected with IP using this NIC card, network interface card, very much similar to what you have on your laptop or on your desktop or wherever you are kind of login right now. So you have a network interface card. In your laptop, it is a hardware network interface card, but in Azure, it is a virtual network interface card, which acts as a bridge between IP and the actual virtual machine, and that's how it is. Now, this is more relevant from the infrastructure point of view, but from the developer point of view, you should be aware that these IPs are connected with the NIC card. So, as sometimes you might be configuring or debugging it, and as the culture of DevOps is coming into picture, you might be debugging it with some of your administrator friends sitting together. This is how it is going to be in coming future. It's no more developer or infrastructure responsibility. It is like shared responsibility. Then you must be aware that what exactly this NIC card is, and that's how it is associated. You have this IP. It can be public IP. It can be private IP. Private IP is mostly used with VPN. Public IP is something you can connect using the internet itself without having to talk about any other bridge, any other communication layer such as VPN. The next thing is Bastion host. Let me clear this up and then I will talk about this. Bastion host is a another service. What happens is that suppose this you want to connect with this VM, right? You want to connect with this VM. To connect with this VM, you must be having a laptop, right? You must be having a laptop which can have the connectivity with this network. And for that, you must be having some configuration on this laptop as well, like VPN setup and all. Now, suppose you don't want to go into this configuration. You don't really want any custom configuration on your laptop. You don't have that, or maybe you don't really want to do that. Now, in that case, you can deploy a service which we call Bastion host in your virtual network. This can be a jump server. Infrastructure engineers are very much familiar with this concept, where you have a temporary or in between server which can connect to these VMs, and you connect to this VM directly. So it is a kind of a bridge, and you connect to this Bastion host using browser, using a desktop or whatsoever you may be, but you don't really have to have a configured laptop with virtual private network connectivity certificate and all those things. You just need a connectivity with your Bastion host. We will look into that option when Arun will show you. We will just show from where you can create. Of course, this is something you will be getting from your infrastructure engineer itself. If you are a developer, you will be only using it from the infrastructure, from the developer point of view. But yes, you should be aware that there is something called Bastion host, which allows you to skip this setup of VPN on your local desktop. That is how it is. It is a temporary in-between server where you can go and you can jump to your internal network, which is your virtual network. And public IP, we have already discussed. This public IP is nothing but internet accessible IP address. through which you can do RDP, SSH, whatever you are doing, RDP for Windows, SSH for Linux. NSG rules are called network security rule. Again, the definition of this network security rule will be done by infrastructure engineer because they dictate the networking, right? I mean, whether it is networking specific team or it is like cloud administrator team who itself takes the networking security. But this network security group has some rules. These rules defines that when you are connecting, whether you are using Bastion host, whether you are using VPN, or whether you are directly going to the VM using public IP, whatsoever you are using. When you go there, you must be going through some network, right? You must be using some port, like either you are accessing the VM on the port 80, or maybe on the RDP port, or on the SSH port, which is 2022. I mean 22. It can be any port, right? Based on the service that you are using. Now, any port you are going, this NSG guy sits here. You can think of it like a virtual firewall. It's not a firewall to say, but you can think of it like a guy who is sitting in front of your network and saying that, am I going to allow this port or not? Am I going to allow this port inside? Come inside. If you have a rule to allow RDP, then it will allow. If you do not have any rule to allow, it will deny. So there are some default NSG rule. Again, that is more infrastructure specific understanding, but why you should aware of this thing from the developer point of view? Because when you access, suppose you have coded your application over here. This application is hosted here. Now this application is accessing one of the service which is there in another VM, or maybe some internet. This is a third-party API which is on internet. Now, when you are accessing this REST API, you must be doing either on HTTP call, right? HTTPS or HTTP, whatever. Now, the communication is, going and coming, right? Ingress and outgress. That's what we call. Now, when you do this traffic movement as a developer, right? Then you must be aware that this NSG guy must be enabled to do this kind of traffic. And that's why you should be aware of this NSG rule as a developer. Now, you will not be creating these rules. You will be asking to create these rules by your developer. You will be, suppose you are doing this, you are writing some code to connect with one of the API which is inside a particular network, or maybe internet, or wherever it is, which uses a particular port to communicate, right? Now this port, you are not able to communicate. Then you might ask your developers, see, what? I'm trying to access this 443. I'm not able to access 443. I'm not able to do this 443 communication. Do you have an NSG rule for 443? They will tell you that we have allowed 443 for these network, or we have allowed this 443 for internet, or we have not allowed 443 for anything. So by default, it is not, nothing is allowed. You have to explicitly allow things. There are certain by default allowed rules which are, which will already be there, such as network to network communication. But whenever you are talking about network communication to another VNet outside, your virtual network and maybe internet or something, then these NSG rule comes into picture, and that's how the developer oriented specific things comes into picture. Even though these are infrastructure specific, topic, but as a developer, you should be aware that this is the thing which is stopping my code. You have written your code, right? You have done your API call using .NET, using Node, using JavaScript or whatsoever language you are using. But your application is hosted on a virtual machine and is not able to communicate to the API so that communication, that transfer can happen. Now that's where this NSG rules, these public IP, NIC Card, RDP, all these things comes into the picture. Now, talking about the next topic, which is ARM template. So far, we have discussed, when you create your VM, these are the various things you need to take care, whether in terms of configuration of the VM, such as size, operating system, naming convention, high availability, or in terms of the different aspect, which is networking specific things. Even though we have tried to map why networking is important for developer to understand, even though this is a day-to-day task of infrastructure engineers, but developers are those people who are consuming this network. So if they are consuming it, where the network traffic is being blocked, where the network is not letting you to do certain things from your application to a particular service such as Azure. This service can be in Azure, this service can be in third-party API, this service can be on-premises network. What are the various things which are coming into picture? NSG rule, VPN, do you have allowed the, is there network already networking established between these two networks? Is there, NSG rule which is blocking this network? All those things. Now, when you deploy or infrastructure engineers do deploy, VMs, they have multiple options like portal and all those things. But one of the things which is very much common or being advertised a lot to do using ARM template. Now, why you should be aware of ARM template as a developer? We will be talking about it. But before that, let's try to understand one of the things which is coming into picture, which is called infrastructure DevOps. So, if you are a developer, you might have already seen most of the things which relates with development, DevOps, which is, CI/CD pipeline, version control. You have, very nice, version control aspect where you are defining your application code. Then you have the CI/CD pipeline, which is building your application and deploying it on a particular, infrastructure. Now, can infrastructure engineer also do these things in a similar way what you are doing as a developer? That's when this infrastructure engineer, infrastructure DevOps comes into picture. Now, why a developer should be aware of that? We will come to that particular point in a bit. But let's try to understand first of all this, problem or this solution. What it says this infrastructure as a code is that the way you are developing your application, right? Any application you develop using some code, right? You write some .NET application using C# or VB.NET or some JavaScript application using JavaScript, and you kind of compile it and then you run that application and you get your appropriate output in browser or in console or whatsoever it may be. Similarly, right now, if you have seen, we create infrastructures using portal, right? You go to the portal, you click on things, and you do this using graphical user interface. But this infrastructure as a code says that why can't we create some script? Why can't we define these things? What we are doing on portal, creating VM with those so and so size, creating network with so and so configuration, creating storage account, creating web app or whatsoever, different services. Instead of going through the manual graphical user interface, why can't we do this using some script, some template? And that's what we call as infrastructure as a code. Why this came, why this particular discussion started? Why people, it's not like, someone wants to just practice the application development way of doing changes or way of doing things. It was because of something called server drift and snowflake servers. What do they mean? From the topic point of view, it is very much interesting topic for infrastructure engineers. But let me try to relate with the developers as well. What happens when you request for a server, right, with some configuration? I need .NET Framework 4.5. I need firewall, Windows firewall with these configuration. I need this registry key with the enable or disable. I need these runtime. I need blah blah blah. Whatever operating system customization you need, you provide that to the infrastructure guy, and they customize this. Right now, what happens that this is the operating system. Let's take an example of Windows itself. Now you ask that Windows, I need Windows 2016 and these are the configuration I need. They did it, Now what happened is that some update of Windows came 2016, and that messed up with some configuration of your server. Nobody knows, and that happens, right? Right in the middle, infrastructure engineers are working on application. Application is not loading. Application team contacted. Application team is saying no, we had no release. There was no change. There was nothing that we have deployed. It must be something from the infrastructure point of view, because server was drifted. Server was having some configuration. Now it has drifted from its configuration. What caused that difference? That is something infrastructure engineers will definitely try to root cause and do the root cause analysis. They try to do this, all these on call and all those things they used to do. Even now many companies or many organizations are doing it, but that is what this server drift is. And then you correct this problem, right? You correct this problem, and then after 5 hours, 6 hours, your server is again up and running. Your application is running, everything is good, going good, fine. But why can't we do this? Why can't we have an immutable infrastructure? What do we mean by immutable infrastructure is that suppose we had the script to deploy this server. Instead of creating this server using some manual approach, if we had this script, right, some PowerShell file or ARM template, we will talk about ARM template or Terraform. There are various tools which are available in market. If we have some script, instead of going through the troubleshooting of this thing, what we will say, okay, this is causing issues. You know what? Some drift has happened. Destroy this guy, create a new one. I have the script. This is what you do with application, right? If your application, code has changed due to any reason, you have already have the old version. You just go there, deploy that old version. You are up and running. Try to figure out later what has happened, who did the change, which was causing the issue. But you are able to restore the service as soon as you discover that there is a problem. But in case of infrastructure, that was not the case, because there was no script, there was no infrastructure as a code. It was all manual. Someone followed some Word document, some PDF document, and they created this using Portal, going through the RDP and all those things. And that's why they cannot redo this by just installing a script or something. They have to do it, find out the problem. And that's the thing which server drift did. There is another problem which is Snowflake server. I will come back to that particular problem. But immutable infrastructure allows you, immutable infrastructure concept says that you don't really have to kind of do this manual changes. You do everything in a script, deploy that. If at all something happens, you redeploy it using this script itself. Any unknown change happens because of some update, because of some manual intervention or something, someone has the access, he went there, took the RDP, he uninstalled this .NET framework itself. No issues, I'll redeploy this script. There are various techniques that infrastructure engineers have to deal with, but this is what happens. Now, Snowflake servers are, you discovered this when you face the problem. Now, suppose you did not face the problem. You did not, your application is not down. Nothing is no problem is coming, right? You have this, everything is working fine. Everything was, everything is there. Your application is just, your server is there, and it is running over 2 years. It has been running, or 3 years, 5 years, 6 years. It's been running. Now after 5 years, you want to migrate it on the Azure. Now you don't know what changes has happened over a period of time, over 3 years. And that's what we call Snowflake server. Snowflake servers are, they are working, it is working fine, but we don't know what configurations are working, because there has not been changes. We don't know what changes have happened. If at all we would have done changes using version control, using code, it would have possible. Now why you should know this from the developer point of view, because this comes under CI/CD. If you will work in a DevOps team, infrastructure engineers will be working along with you to define this infrastructure as a code, because you know what infrastructure you need, they know how to create that, and that's how this things aligns well. If you know the aspect, what is possible, what is not possible, then you can ask them, you can suggest them, you can request from them, and if they know what is not possible, they can communicate back to you, and then that's how this whole concept of DevOps will come into picture. When you create ARM template, this is the structure of ARM template. It's not something that a developer will go towards, go ahead and develop these ARM template in day-to-day activity. But yes, it's good to go, have a perspective of this ARM template, what exactly happens. How do you, how do you define the parameter? How do you, it's normally a JSON file where you define your ARM template, you define your Azure resources, and that's how this is defined. It is a very basic ARM template blank definition. It is a very blank. There is nothing defined here, but you can, define various components over here. That is more or less done by infrastructure engineers in day-to-day activity. As a developer, you might come across these codes when you are working with infrastructure engineers, and you may have to look at these codes in your day-to-day activity, not as a contributor, but as a reviewer, or as a as someone who can suggest certain things so that it can get you things what you need. It works on the ARM API level. You kind of deploy your ARM template using ARM API connection. We already saw that diagram where we have seen the communication happens. It's a wrong slide. Yeah, this one. You connect to this ARM template using using this HTTP call, which is REST API, and then things will work behind the scene. You don't really have to worry about those things. When you have a definition, ARM template definition, you can work with it without having to worry about all those things. There is quick start template. We will be posting that link in the chat once our theory will complete. That quick start template will help you to go through some of the already developed ARM template, which has been released by Microsoft as an open source contribution, and you can actually start working with it. As a developer, you might use it for deploying some of the stack that you need for learning purpose, like such as mean stack, or some stack that you need for hosting application based on Linux or Azure, Windows or something. But yeah, from the day-to-day activity point of view, you will be requesting the same thing with Azure Administrator, and they will be deploying it. You will be kind of requesting the features or the definitions what you need in that. It helps you deploy, implement infrastructure as a code practice in Azure. That's why we use this ARM template. Again, it's more or less aligned with the developers, infrastructure engineers. But yes, as a developer, you should be knowing this interface. That apart from portal, you have this interface where you can actually define your infrastructure using the coded technology instead of going through the graphical user interface. And why we are doing it? Because we have the problem of Snowflake server depth and all those things. Now, when you work with Azure ARM template, you might need these various tools. VS Code you must be using already if you are a developer. VS Code has a very nice extension which is called ARM Tools extension, which helps you develop your ARM template just like any other extension you have in Visual Studio Code. It is another extension on the marketplace, released by Microsoft itself. You have AZ PowerShell module. You will need AZ PowerShell module to connect to the Azure. Again, this is something more or less used by infrastructure on day-to-day basis, but you may need to install it and have a feeling and have understanding. From the exam point of view, you should be aware that these tools are available to connect with Azure, and you might need these tools as a developer for connecting with Azure. We will be demonstrating some of the things in our upcoming sessions when we will be creating some resources from the developer point of view, and we will be using these tools to do that, so that you get the feeling that this is how it works. App service is another platform as a service solution which you have. This is very much similar to Azure VM, except it comes under platform as a service category. In platform as a service category, you don't really have to deal with operating system. All you need is a service where you will be defining what language you have. Is it a .NET framework, is it a Node, is it a Python, whatever. There are multiple language support. We will be talking about that in upcoming slide. All you need to know that these are the services, these are the platforms that are supported. You can just provide your code and it will host it. You don't really have to worry about which operating system. Of course, you will be selecting the platform, whether it is a Windows platform based application or whether it is a Linux based platform application, so that in the backend they will spin up the appropriate operating system. But you don't have to control that. You don't really have to patch it. You don't really have to control the security on the operating system level along those things. Now, talking about the app service DevOps, when you deploy services in Azure, this is what it happens. As a developer, you might be developing your code and putting it in the Azure DevOps, in Azure repo. Now you have the build definition, it is taking care of deployment, or you can actually do it from the Visual Studio as well. That is also possible, but you deploy it. Now, when you deploy in Azure App Service, you have this app service plan, which is hosting your app. App service plan is something which is having all the resources that you need for hosting the application. App service is a configuration. App service plan is your CPU and RAM. You can think of it like that. You create a CPU RAM kind of thing, that this much RAM I need, this much CPU I need, and this app service will get that thing from here, and then you can have another app service which is also using the same CPU or RAM, for reusable purpose, and then they can connect to some Azure SQL or on-premises SQL server, and then of course they can be exposed to internet. People can connect to this app service on a URL, and they can actually connect to this application and work with it just like any other web application. That's how this service fits into your application architecture. As I said, it supports multiple programming languages to be hosted. All you care about your code and the platform. Based on your platform, you will get the managed hosting. You don't really have to worry about any other thing than just you provide how much resources you need, what platform you need. Other than that, you don't really have to worry about, just like in virtual machine, you have to worry about operating system, you have to worry about runtime, .NET framework, and all those things. Here it will be all managed. You just select that framework I need. It will make sure this framework is always available to you from the backend resources. Autoscale, as I said, just like virtual machine, it also supports autoscale just like any other Azure resources. And there are certain other things which are there. App service, as we have seen on the previous slide, it is a hosting place for your service. So app service is something called just give me a moment. My slide is okay. Yeah. So app service is something which is helping you to the hosting the application on the the resource specific things will be managed by app service plan. Autoscale, as we said, it is highly available. You don't really have to worry about the high availability. Just like virtual machine has various options for high availability, Azure App Service also has these options. Hosting we have already discussed. Pricing tier, again, just like any other service, when you create app service, you have to select the pricing tier, and that pricing tier will be differing for different resource, right? I mean, when you create an app service plan, you will be selected how much CPU, how much RAM. It will be possible with this pricing, and similar to that, based on your pricing, you will be charged for that. And again, it is a pay-as-you-go model. As long as you are using, you are being charged. The moment you delete your service, or you delete your service, you will not be charged. You don't have to have any upfront cost, or you don't really have to have a monthly cycle or something like that. Location, again, just like VM, virtual machine, you have the location in consideration. Here also you have to have the location in your consideration when you are deploying your service, and based on the uses. So if service is being used by United States people, you possibly select one of the United States location which is nearest to your users or consumers which are going to use this app service. Web app. Deployment slot is one of the option in web app, which allows you to have a copy of your same application. Okay, so you have traditionally what we do is we have our dev instance, we have our prod instance. We have to create a separate infrastructure for dev instance, and we have to have a prod instance. But in app service, what is the benefit is that you just have to click on one button. Based on that click, it will create an identical environment for your app, and then actually before deploying to your production, the live website, live web application, you can deploy it to one of the slot which you have created, which will have the same configuration, and you can test that okay, application is working fine in this slot, then it will work in the another slot, and you can swap the slot. So we will see that option there in the portal, but it is a very efficient use of environment. You don't really have to create a separate environment for your testing. You can have a slot, you can deploy your application in one slot, and then you can swap your slot as and when your application is okay and it is performing as expected in your test slot or dev slot. Then you can just click on one button and it will swap, blue green deployment kind of thing. It will be able to proceed. And automated deployment app service supports CI/CD out of the box. You can configure CI/CD with Azure DevOps services or any other CI pipeline services such as Jenkins and all, and you can establish the automated deployment to this service with minimal effort. It is very much out of the box, that support is there. When you create an app service, you can authenticate with multiple providers. In your application configuration, you will be defining that providers, and there are many providers for your application. These are some of the famous providers that we use in different applications. Azure Active Directory, most of your on-premises or in enterprise applications, you might be using Azure Active Directory provider, but it is possible to integrate your app service with any provider such as Facebook, Google, Twitter as well. Very much possible there. You just go through the documentation. The difference is just about this URL that you see on the screen. So you just need to make that difference here. Here you see auth.login-AAD. Here it will be Microsoft account. Microsoft account is like your normal Microsoft Live account, Hotmail account. AAD is like your Azure Active Directory. Facebook, Google, Twitter, self-explanatory. You can deploy your application and integrate with any one of the authentication provider to authenticate users using this using these authentications. We have talked about multiple language support. These are the languages that are supported by app service, Azure App Service. It supports ASP.NET Core. It supports ASP.NET on Windows. It supports PHP. It supports Ruby. It supports Node.js. It supports Java. It supports Python. It supports HTML, basic HTML, and it supports containers as well, Docker container. So if you have a Docker container image, you can, apart from your typical application, you can also deploy a container image as well. So these, most of the popular framework are supported on app service, where you can directly deploy your application on this app service in a platform as a service environment. You don't have to worry about anything about the infrastructure details. Windows is updated or not, Windows, what version, Windows 2019 will work, 2016 will work. It is a Windows or Linux, that's it. And then you tell the framework, is it a .NET framework, is it a .NET Core? .NET Core or Windows, that's it. Now behind the scene, it will make sure that you have the appropriate framework and appropriate operating system combination which can work with your application. When you use application, this app service, you can configure various properties on your app service, and these are the few configuration which you have that you may need based on your needs. One of the thing that you will need is custom domain. By default, when you deploy an app service, it comes with a Windows Azure websites.net, something like that. But you might want to customize that abc.com, xyz.com, your company URL. That is possible, and that is there in custom domain option. We'll see that in the portal when we have that. SSL, you can configure your app service to authenticate on a SSL, SSL with the SSL certificate. So many of the organization will have their own SSL certificate that they want to apply, so that only those people who have those certificate can connect to the service possible, and that is something you will explore as a developer, at some time when you have deployed your application. These are the few of the properties. There are many properties. As infrastructure engineers, some of the things you will be using on day-to-day basis. As a developer, you might be exploring some of the services either during the architecture or during the deployment. So these are the few one which make sense for a developer as well as for the infrastructure. Configuration setting is another setting which is available. For example, when you deploy a .NET application, you might want to define some of the app settings such as connection string, some application settings which you cannot put in your web.config file. Those things you can define on the platform itself, and you can access those variables, those configurations using configuration manager that you must be using already. If you have already developed some application in .NET, those things you can access it within code without having to have in your code you can put secret information such as API keys or connection string and all those things in this configuration setting. It comes with virtual network integration. So virtual network, as I said, it is a private network where you have restricted networking. So if at all your app service has a requirement where it should not be accessible on the public internet, then you can integrate with virtual network. It is, you will be able to do that. That integration is possible. By default, it will not be there, but you can do later on. It is mostly, this is the requirement you will get mostly if you are developing an application which is an enterprise application, then you might need this this particular thing, virtual network integration. Auto scaling is one of the next thing, which is something you can do the auto scaling. You can define auto scale rules that based on that you can auto scale your application based on those rules and conditions. So that is also something you may deploy your application with the minimal infrastructure, minimal resources, and then later on you might want to auto scale based on some rules such as on weekend, or if at all CPU threshold is going beyond that or something like that. Those things are possible. And as application insight is one of the other service which can integrate and give you the monitoring capability of your application. We are going to discuss application insight in detail during our monitoring discussion, which is a different module in this exam itself. But application insight gives you the monitoring capability of application where you can trace up to the crash report, any exception is happening, what level it is happening, what is the user path, if user is able to access this page, why he's, if he's abandoning, why user is not going forward on another page, why what is the uses of pages. All those, monitoring you can do based on infrastructure or based on application level, code level thing, where you can monitor, and you can also define your custom metrics where you can define code, define your monitoring in the code itself, so that you can track certain activity when execution is happening. So if you user access a particular button or a particular feature in your application, you can track that information in your monitoring so that you can use it for further analysis. It can be, we will be talking about those use cases when we will go through that monitoring aspect of your application from the development point of view. Of course, we'll be touch basing on the infrastructure as well. Now with that, we'll go for a short break. We'll go for a 10 minutes break. After 10 minutes, Arun will be coming. Arun will be joining us, and he will be going through the lab part of discussion. So we will try to demonstrate some of the things which we have discussed during the discussion, and we'll touch base upon certain things. And then after 10 minutes, let me start the timer actually. Uh, so after 10 minutes, we'll come back and we'll see that how the various services helps you to deploy various things, such as how you can use the portal, how you can use some of the Azure CLI and PowerShell, all those things, or console. And after that, we'll be having the quiz. Once demo is done, we'll be having a quiz, and then the quiz, the winners will be announced in the next session. The quiz winners, and also we are going to announce the winner of the previous sessions. So we had the quiz during our previous session, which we ended last last session. So we'll be announcing those winners of the session. So let's go for a quick break. 1 minute already there. So let's go for a 9 minutes break, and we'll come back exactly after 10 minutes, and we'll start the demonstration. Okay, thank you. Okay, Arun, you there? Arun?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Yes, please go ahead and share your screen and let's get started.
Let me know once you can see my screen.
Sure.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you. Well, I must say thanks, Ashish, for all the theory, and it was wonderful and a lot to sink in. However, I must say, I can't control it. Theory is kind of boring, right? Maybe
Sure.
viewers agree
Yes.
with me or not, but
Yes.
I must emphasize on the importance of theory. And the best way to cement it is implement it.
Exactly.
That lends us to on lab, exercise it and build muscle memory. So
That's
this
where we
is
are going to get there.
absolutely. So this is very first session and we'll stick to the surface for now and we'll go step by step in future sessions. And today's lab is all about Azure Compute, that to VM creation and web app. So let's get into it. So we can deploy VM with many ways, as mentioned by Ashish in the beginning, like with the help of Azure Portal, PowerShell, CLI, IAC tools, infrastructure as code tools like ARM templates, Terraform, etc. So I will try to cover as much as I can in this demo. So let me show you first with the help of CLI, then we'll try to cover with PowerShell and then Azure Portal. So there are multiple ways that you can utilize CLI. You can install as MSI on your virtual machine or your own laptop by which you are uh, working or taking care of your cloud things, right? But the best way that I feel is the Cloud Shell. If you see here my mouse right now at the top, right, if I click here, it will give me the Cloud Shell. Now, since I'm doing this session, it's better if I go and open another tab and type shell.azure.com. It will give me the shell as a complete window. And what I'll do, I'll try to maximize the size of the fonts so that it would be easy for everyone. It's already large. Oh, thank God. I must have done before the break. All right, so I'm inside the CLI. The very first thing when you are doing the MSI CLI, not the Azure Cloud CLI, you have to log into your account that you can do AZ login. But right now I'm in the Cloud CLI, so I need not to log in. However, I need to check whether I'm working on a right subscription or not, which is very important. So to do that, we need to do AZ account list. It will show me all the subscription that I have access to. And this is the MCT account. So I have only one subscription, so I need not to select anything. But in case if you have to select your subscriptions to work with, because if you will not select whatever you will do on the shell, it will happen on the default subscription, and which is not good. So let's go ahead and do AZ account set. This will help us to set the subscription --. And IntelliSense works very well in Cloud Shell. If I click tab, it will give me the subscription. You have to give the name of the subscription. For me, it's Visual Studio. I just hit the tab and it gave me the entire subscription name, and I'll hit enter. Now my account is selected. Now if I do AZ account show, it will show me whatever or whichever account I have selected. So this is just for anyone who is beginner here, who wants to know like how this is happening. Now let's get into the VM creation. I'll also try to cover a few things, like if you do not know how to operate the CLI, how can you ask for help to the CLI? Okay, So we are going to create the VM. So it's AZ VM, as simple as that, but we do not know what's going to happen next. So what we can do -help, and it will help us with a lot of information. It will provide us subgroups. It will provide us commands. So we are not looking for the subgroups. What we are looking for, we are looking for commands. So as the common sense says, create seems to be the most appropriate. We says create an Azure virtual machine. So that's what we're gonna do right now, right here. Let me clear this out first. AZVM create. Now, if I don't know what's gonna happen, let's do help again. And it will give me information that I can utilize. If you see, just like PowerShell, it's giving me the examples that I can utilize, use this, use this, use this. Also, it's giving me all other information that I can utilize. So that's how you can get help from CLI, but we are here to create the virtual machine. Okay, now the time is very less and I have to cover a lot of things. So I have to cut short few things. So just bear with me. Okay, so let me quickly create AZVM create. Now I have to give the name for the virtual machine. That is, let me give it my VM one resource group. I'm just clicking on the tab. I'm just pressing the tab and IntelliSense is working. Let me give it my RG. Now, before you hit enter after completing this command, make sure you would have your resource group with you. What do you mean by that? Resource group is already created. If it's not already created, it will not pick it up. Now let me quickly show you if I have that resource group. If I do not have that resource group, I need to create that first, but I have this resource group, so I need not to. But if you have to create it, use the same helping command that I showed you at the beginning, AZ group -help. You would encounter the commands like create, AZ group create, give the name, give the location, you'll be good to go. So image, I'm giving it, let's create the Debian. Though I totally belong to the Windows background, but it's fine. Let's do the Debian. Let's do admin user. Just stop because we do have admin password option here. So let me give it AZ admin. Let me quickly give the password as well. You should not do that, but why I'm doing it, because of the time constraint. I'm just trying to create as soon as possible so that I can move ahead and show you on PowerShell as well. Also portal as well. So we have given the minimum information here. However, you can also go ahead and give many information. Now it's running. While it's running, and it will give you the output in JSON format, as Ashish mentioned at the beginning. So meanwhile, let me quickly open my PowerShell. Okay, while it's running, it will create this VM, hopefully, if there would not be an issue. Let me open my PowerShell. Now, if you're doing with the PowerShell, now this is not the cloud PowerShell. This is the PowerShell that I have configured on my virtual machine to access the Azure. I have installed the AZ module for the PowerShell. So what I need to do first, I need to connect to AZ account, right? So when you connect to the AZ account, you need to log in with your email address. Hopefully it wouldn't take much. And I'm in. Now I have only the one subscription, so I need not to select it as I informed in the AZ CLI. We can still do it with the help of select AZ subscription, right? But we need not to. Let me close that down. And here, if I do simple new AZ VM, it will help me to create a VM with the default settings. Let me show you. If I hit enter, it will ask me the name for the virtual machine. Let me give it my VM3. Enter. It will ask me to select the username. Let me go AZ admin and the password. Let me give it the password. And it will go and it says it start running as per the default configuration. I'm going to stop it, these commands right here, because we only need to know how it is happening. I want to show you a little more. So let me cancel it. I have canceled it. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how can you get more information of creating a virtual machine from the PowerShell itself. OK, so how can we do that? We can do get help and new AZ VM. We only need to see the examples. If I do the examples here you can see, let's go with the example 3. Here you have all the information, all the configuration that you can utilize as per your need to configure your virtual machine, in which subnet, in which virtual network, what kind of VM size. If you were there when Ashish was explaining the VM size, here it is, the VM size. We need resource group for each and every virtual machine. So here is the virtual machine. You can simply go ahead and copy this, right? And you open this like ISC and you can paste it here. And you can configure, you can just put in all that information what you need. And the final command is new AZVM. That I explained at the beginning. Give it a resource name, location, and what is virtual machine here? It's the configuration that you gave, all those things that you have selected, right? So let me close this. Now let's go quickly to Azure portal as well. However, it has created the virtual machine that is my VM1. Let me get back to the portal. Come here, click on the virtual machines. My VM1, even my VM3 got created because when I was hitting Control C to stop, it has already triggered. That's why it is here, but it's fine. Our motive is not here to, troubleshoot what happened. Our motive is here to create the virtual machine by various means. So this is the my VM1 that we have created. Now let's quickly go ahead and try to do this with the help of portal. Azure portal. I hit the virtual machine. I'm adding the virtual machine, and if you were alert and aware when Ashish was showing you the slide, this is the slide, the portal slide that he showed you. So again, we are trying to create the virtual machine with the help of Azure portal. Now here, what we are doing, we are selecting the resource group. If you remember, I explained before hitting the Azure CLI command to create the virtual machine, we need to have a resource group. And if you were with us, even in our previous certification path or our sessions, for every resource, we got to have a resource group. So there is the resource group, there is the virtual machine name, the region where you want to create it, and here are the different availability options. It is already explained by Ashish and Vipin. Now, here is the sizes. Now, let me also quickly give you, if you go on Google and simply type Azure VM size, hopefully we'll land on the same page. Yes, right here. There are different types of VM sizes. You can see for general purpose, these many, for compute optimized F series, for memory optimized E series, storage, GPU. There are various kind of VM sizes that we utilize as per our need, right? So let me get back to the VM size. Then we need to select the username. If you remember, I was putting always AZ admin, password. All right, I'm just taking you through the Azure portal, so that you would be familiar what all options are there. Now, these are the inbound ports, which has already been discussed, the network security group by which we control the network traffic. If you want the RDP, as Ashish informed, if you have the public IP addresses, and if you want from on-premises to access that through RDP, that's how we open the ports, right? If I hit next, there is information for the storage. Storage for what? Storage for the virtual machine. There are various ways we can have a different kind of a disk, like premium disk, standard SSDs, standard HDD, which is which is already covered very well in our previous infrastructure administration certification 104. You can go ahead and check on the YouTube Azure talk. You'll find it's a great explanation. It says encryption. Yes, it is by default. It's encrypted. Let's go to the networking. Here we need to place our virtual machine inside a virtual network. We cannot have a virtual machine without a network, without a virtual network. Even if we are just running the simple command to run a virtual machine, to create a virtual machine without selecting the virtual network, in the backend, PowerShell was creating it. Okay, and in the CLI, it was creating it. But if that virtual network is already there in the existing resource group, so it will select by default the existing virtual network. So we need virtual network to create a virtual machine. Similarly, public IP, it depends what kind of virtual machine it is. So you can select, or if you do not want to select, we do not select. We usually do not select for the production workloads or operational workload. Here we have the security group. Why I'm not creating it, because it will take another few minutes, and we already have the scarcity of time. We already have VM created through CLI. I'm going to show you all these things in that Windows pane of existing virtual machines. That's why I'm not selecting all that, just informing you. So it's the inbound ports. And if you want to place this virtual machine to the load balancers, which is already there, which we have not covered yet. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is on the surface. This is the very first session, and let's hit management. So under management, you see it's talking about the security center, which has, you know, basic and the standard. Standard is pretty expensive. Basic is free of cost, so it comes under it. It will give all the recommendation which is needed. The monitoring thing, it will get the boot diagnostic log or the OS guest diagnostic log identity. This identity represent the managed identities, which are like two kinds: user or system. If you want to enable the auto shutdown that Ashish mentioned in the theory part. If, for example, you have like 8 hours of office timing, and this is your development machine, afterwards you're going home, nobody's using that machine, so you can place this auto shutdown. It will be off, and you only have to pay for what you use. Similarly, if you are going with the site recovery, you can replicate to the another region. This is for the update management. And these are the advanced things. For example, if you want to bootstrap some extension, like if you want your virtual machine come up with the IIS configured, then you can enable those extensions from here. This is the proximity placement group that allows you to group Azure resources physically closer. And these are the tags. And now if you click review and create, it will create your machine. So we already have the virtual machine, so let's not go there and save some time. Click on virtual machine, my VM1. This is what we have created with the help of CLI. Let me make it a little bigger. All right. Oh, okay, come on. There we go. So this is the virtual machine, and this is the overview pane. And you remember we created a Debian, so it gave us the latest, and this is the public IP address. This pane, this overview pane, will give the essential information that is needed for the virtual machine. And if you just minimize it, let me show you after making it a little smaller so that you will relate what I'm saying. You see here, if I just minimize this essential, you'll find all the properties of the virtual machine, like what networking means, in which virtual network, in what subnet it is residing, what is the IP address, what is the public IP address. Here it will talk about the availability and scaling that we are not covering as of now, but VPN and Ashish has already talked about it. This is the size that we have already talked about. Disk we have covered, like premium, standard, HDD, SSDs, those things. Now let me if I click here, I just remember Ashish was talking about the Bastion server. So this is how the Bastion works. If you click on connect, there is the Bastion. This is the managed jump server of the Azure. You know, if you're familiar with the jump server, this is just like a jump server, but it is managed. You need not to worry about the patching or the things like that. This is all managed by the Azure. Okay, now if I click on the networking, before I click on the networking, let me click on the activity log. Here is the log which will help you find the information about whatever, all the APIs, who is working, what is working on the platform. It will give you. For now, it is giving me the information like who created the virtual machine, right? So this is very important. Now, if I click on the networking here, this is what Ashish was talking about. This is the network security group. And these are the rules for now, because I have created with the default value, this opened port 22 for everything, which is not at all a good practice. I should have selected my IP address here, but I'm gonna delete it just now. Like after 30 minutes, I'm gonna delete it, so it's fine. But you don't do it. We do not do it. It is always source. Even if it is a lab or the development environment, source is always the IP address who is using this virtual machine, right? Okay, so if you click here on the network interface that he explained very well, there is a virtual machine, there is a virtual network, and NIC connecting both. So who is holding your IP address? It's the NIC. Let me click on the NIC to show you where is the IP address. If you click on the IP configuration, you'll find right here there is your public IP address, there is a private IP address. If you click here, you can simply make it static. You can make it dynamic. You can disassociate the public IP address if you do not want to have this public IP address associated with your VM, which usually we do not, right? We can configure the DNS server, DNS on DNS on the network interface as well, and we can also apply these DNS on the virtual network as well. So let me quickly get back to the virtual machine before I divert from the topic. All right. So we talked about this connect. We talked about here are the disks. Right now it has only OS disk, but you can attach more disk by clicking here. You can also extend your disk whenever needed. You can take a snapshot as well. Here is the size. You can change or modify the size whatever you want, but it will require a reboot. Don't forget that. If there is a request, you should always inform. It will require a downtime. As per developers' point of view, I think continuous delivery is something that Ashish mentioned. That's how it works. Extensions, which is very important, that I also mentioned. You can click add, and if you want to bootstrap any script, you just simply use those. For example, right here, this is for Linux. We can use the PowerShell script for Windows virtual machine. So these are the extensions which will help you. Identity I've covered. This is the managed entities. That means you can give the permissions to the virtual machine itself, which is very helpful as per security perspective. When you're using Vault and your applications are working, you can save the credentials in the Vault and give the permissions to the virtual machine rather giving to the individual users. So we have two kinds, system and user. Now availability and scalability we already covered. Under configuration, this is little advanced because it is showing you the just-in-time.
Just 1 minute. I will just go back to that managed identity. I think that is very much relatable to developers. Let's go to that. Yeah. So guys, this is very new service relatively, but it is very, very relatable to you. You might be thinking like, virtual machine, a lot of things are, infrastructure oriented, but this one is really a core of the virtual machine on the cloud. So normally, when you have an application hosted on virtual machine, you connect to any service like SQL, right? To do certain things on the SQL database. You have to authorize, right? You have to have the username and password for connecting. You don't need it anymore. You just provide that access, right? Arun, that's what it is, right?
So,
Arun, yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So thank you, Ashish. Yeah, that's what it is. And
yes.
There are two different ways, like system and user. System is, it all depends. If user exists, managed identity exists. And if system is there, if you remove the system, that identity gone. Yes. So let's go to, this is the bastion that we have already covered. Auto shutdown we covered while creating, while showing you the wizard of creating the virtual machine. These are for the backups. These are for the DR, if you remember the ASR on that. So these are all the general information. These will be covered during the monitoring session of ours. And redeploy is something which is very important as per the infrastructure perspective. Something goes wrong, you can redeploy a virtual machine, which will change the host. You can reset the password. If you forget your password, you're not able to log into your virtual machine. You can reset it from here. Here you can access the serial console of your virtual machine. Similarly, we do have run command. You can utilize this. So most of these things are related to the infrastructure, as Ashish mentioned at the very beginning. So let me quickly get back to the command. This worked. Now, even if you can also SSH your virtual machine with the help of public IP address, whichever virtual machine possesses right now. If you do this and do SSH and simply put in the information of username, hopefully this should work. So you can do this from your Cloud Shell as well, rather than going through the traditional way. I messed this up. I'm sorry. Let me try it again. All right, so we are in. You can see we are in. If I type host name, oh, I'm sorry. It's not heist happening here. It's the host. Okay, host name. All right, let me do this. If I am inside my virtual machine, then hopefully this virtual machine I chose as a uname, it's Linux. Cool. Now, even if you want to see a little more, you can do the if config, but I don't think it will work because we do not have that package. You can do sudo su and get the administration root access, and you can install if config, but I think that's irrelevant for now because we are just here to cover the virtual machine. But we have this if config done. Let me show you if it works. There we go. So this is the virtual IP address, private IP address of the virtual machine. So I think this is all about the virtual machine. I actually used PowerShell, CLI, and Portal. I wasn't prepared that, but I have to. Ashish, if something is missing, and Vipin, if something is missing, please add on before I jump to the app services.
No, I think we have covered more, many things, considering the time constraint that we have. And of course, this is the first session that we are having. We will be touch basing upon various aspects as and when we'll be moving in this series. So yeah, we are good. Right. Thank you so much, Arun.
All right, let me exit it out from here because I need my shell here for sure. Okay. Now I'm going to the portal again. All right, so let's move on and let's go to the second lab, which is the app services. So what do you need to do? You need to click here, go to these are my favorites. You click on the app services. You can make it your favorite as well. Click on the create app service, and you need to configure app service. As I've already informed, we need a resource group before we get anything in our Azure environment. So I'm going to choose the existing resource group. Let me choose my RG. Now I'm going to give the name for the app service. Let me give it Azure AZ-1010. Oh, nobody has taken it, so I can utilize it. It should be unique because you see here .azurewebsite.net. This is the public DNS. So we can have code or we can have Docker container. I think Docker container will cover in our next session. So I'm going to stick to the code. But if you choose Docker container, you need to inform information like where you're gonna get the image from, those kind of information. But for now, we are going to hit the code. And our runtime stack is all those languages that Ashish informed in his very good presentation, different languages. These are there, all those information, all those languages, .NET, Java, Node, PHP, Python, Ruby. I'm selecting this .NET Core 3.1. and I can choose Linux and Windows both because it works on both. Let me select, it doesn't matter what I select because this is just for the demo purpose. So let it be Central US, that's okay with me. Now here we are selecting the Windows, okay, Windows. Let me go back to the East US. I think I've created all the virtual machine in the East US. So here we have. Now, here are the Windows plan. These are the app service plan. If you remember, when Ashish was explaining this, we need app service plan to deploy the app services, because app services are running on the compute power, which is app service plan. So app service is a hosting service for web application, APIs, mobile backends. It's a PaaS service, which is all covered. So app service plan is the compute power. As if I click here, change size, you'll see there are different kind of plans. We have dev plan, we have production plan, we have isolated plan. So as SKU increases, so is the features. If you see here, if I go with dev test, we have limited features. If I click on the production, we have so many other features, like we can have custom domain and SSL. We have auto scale up to 10 instances. We have staging slots, the deployment slots that he covered already. We have backups, traffic manager, or different features. Like that's how it works, you know, basic SKU, limited features, advanced SKU, more features. So we have dev test, we have production, we have isolated. Just to cover a little bit here, dev test, if you see, we have free and shared, but these both are running on the shared compute. Free and shared both runs an app on the same Azure VMs on the back end, right? Like other services app, like other apps of other customers can also be running on the same virtual machine. These are the shared compute. These tiers allocated CPU quotas to each app that runs on the shared resources, and the resources cannot scale out that I showed you when I click on the production. If you see out of scale, we do not have these wonderful features, because this is just for the testing purpose, for the development purpose. This is the shared compute, which is very important to know. And if you go with the production, we have dedicated compute. So we have free, we have shared. If you see here, my mouse here, right? Free, shared. If you go to the production, we have dedicated compute. That means apps will run on their dedicated Azure VMs at the backend. Okay, and the app which share the same plan can run on the same compute, which means you can host multiple apps on your app service plan. It's not like for one app service you need a single plan. You can have multiple app services on a single plan. If it's a dedicated, that's only your app services running on that virtual machine. But if you go with the isolated, which is highly recommended for the security purposes, for the compliance purposes, as the name says, these Azure VMs are completely isolated to run your app services. It provides, let me put it this way, it provides network isolation on the top of compute isolation to your apps. Okay, so for our testing purpose, it's fine. I'll go with the standard. The deployment, if it is going for the continuous deployment, we are not doing it. It has already been covered in AZ-400. If you are guys interested, go watch it on the Azure Talk YouTube channel. You'll find all those wonderful videos, which is created by the team. Click on monitoring. This is the application insight, which we will cover in detail in our next sessions, coming sessions. It requires enormous time, but this will help you to get the insight of the application. It's a very good monitoring tool that usually people use it. I've seen people using application insight very often. Now the tags and review and create. So that's how we simply going to create our virtual machine. Now, these are not only things that we are going to cover here. Just stay with me, because there's so many other things that you'll find once the app service is created, just like the virtual machine. Okay, like we have created the virtual machine, and on the Windows pane, it showed us a lot of things, right? Similarly, once this is created, we're gonna cover all those important stuff which has already been covered by Ashish, but I'm gonna show you. All right, so I tried my best to kill the dead air. All right, so this is the app service, Azure EZ 1010. And these are all the information that you must be aware of. Not all of it, because a lot of it is related to the infrastructure, but as for the developer, we'll try to cover as much as we can. So this is a web service. This is the public URL. If I click it, it will show me the default page for this app services. Okay, this is the hosting HTML which is residing on the root. And here are the deployment slots, which Ashish mentioned in his slide. So what is deployment slot? It has already been covered, but just to give you another way of showing it, it's like it gives you the ability to have different or multiple versions of your app running within the same app service, right? You can create another slot like a staging slot, right? You can put all those code there. So this feature is primarily aimed at a staging or UAT version of your app running alongside the production version. Deployment slots are only available in production app service plans, S1 or high. It's not there for the basics, right? Which we already covered in the app service plan. Not only you can have different versions of your code in different slots, but also separate configuration settings, which is amazing, right? It's great feature, right? And you can also divert the traffic, right? Here you can see the percentage of traffic. If you create one more slot here, you can send some traffic, like 75% here in the production, 25% is there. That can also be done, right? And when it comes to going live with the new version of your app that is deployed in the staging slot, there is no need to redeploy to production. There is a swap feature. It is grayed out because I have not created another slot. Okay, if I created, it would be visible and you can hit swap rather than going through the entire process again. So it will help you, fasten your lifecycle process of deploying the code in the production. So it's a great feature. This is essentially a DNS swap. The production slot is now the staging slot once you hit the swap. Okay, so let's go to the deployment center. All right. Okay. So deployment center is like multiple ways to deploy your app to the app services or your code to the app services. And it has all the capabilities for CI/CD along with the manual way, or it supports FTP as well. And here are the credentials for it. Like if you click here, you have the credentials for your FTP, the traditional way. If you go to the settings, you click here, you'll find different ways of publishing your code to the app services like GitHub, Bitbucket. These are the DevOps thing. These are the manual thing. So this is the deployment center. If you hit the configuration, here you'll find all the common settings for the web apps or mobile backends or API app. We'll also cover it in a demo in future where we are putting the information of our storage account, putting the access key of our storage account and fetching the image from the storage account to publish or to show through the URL of the app services. It will come in upcoming videos. This is just the beginning, right? So we can also configure the connection string to hook up your app to the database, right? We do have a general settings tab here where we have all the information that we have selected for this app services. There is an always on feature. This will prevent your app from being idle out due to inactivity, or you can simply say this will keep the app loaded even when there is no traffic. ARR affinity is very interesting because if you were there with us when we were covering the administrative 104, AZ-104, we have discussed all the load balancers. If you remember the session affinity, it is just like that. In a multi-instance deployment, ensure that the client is routed to the same instance for the life of the session. You can set this option to off. for stateless applications. This is for the debugging purpose. And let's say the default documents, you guys, this seems very familiar. So it is exactly what you think it is. And here we have the path mapping where you can map a virtual directory to a physical path. Now, this is the authentication that the slide was showing at the beginning, the different identity providers that you can use for your app services, the Azure AD, Facebook, Google, Twitter, those things. And we have application inside, we have already covered. Even identities, this is the same identity that we talked about during the VM creation, managed identity. This is the same thing, system and user, because if your app is going to talk to the other Azure resources, that's how you can enable it. It can, your app services where you are configuring the connection string can talk to the DB through its own credentials. No need to type the information of, database, username, password, things like that. It can also talk to the, other Azure resources. These are for the backups, custom domains. If you want to configure your own domain, because right now, if you go to the overview, you'll find this is what the URL is, which doesn't suit everybody. Like nobody's gonna talk, not gonna type the entire URL, right? Because what do you want? You want like Amazon.com or MSN.com or things like that. So you can you can register your domain here, right here. You can utilize. You can add your custom domain, put in the text record, and it will show you your URL, not the default URL. These are the TLS settings that you only want to have the HTTPS traffic coming to your app service that you can configure here. This networking will help you to integrate your app service to the virtual network. You can also restrict the access. You can stop people accessing your virtual machine if you want to. And these are the wonderful options to scale, auto scale, that you configure, scale up. Like you can change the plans, the app service plans. You can go from like V2 to P2V2, and scale out is like you are increasing this is horizontal scaling. You're increasing the instance count, right? Web jobs. Web jobs is a feature of this app service that enables you to run a program or a script in the same instance as a web app or API app. There is no additional cost to use web jobs though, but this is a wonderful feature, right? So these are all the features which is there. A lot will be covered in the upcoming videos or the sessions. So let me show you if I could right now. I have this. Let me go to deployment center. And before I go to deployment center, let me try this. I'm back to the Cloud Shell, and if I do, I have Cloud Drive here. Let me go to Cloud Drive. I have this zip file. This is nothing, just a simple index HTML page. I put it in the zip. There is a way that you can deploy this page to your app services, right? So let me use this if this will help. Else, I'll show you with the help of what do we say, FTP. So it is AZ web app deployment. Hope I'm writing it correct. AZ web app deployment source config zip resource group. Come on. I think I pressed twice. Somehow it's IntelliSense stopped working. I don't know why, but let's see. Usually doesn't happen with this Cloud Shell. Name, we have Azure AZ-1010. What I remember, Azure AZ-1010, right? Let me give the source, which is index.html.zip right? Hopefully this will no. Oh, deployment. Oh my God, I did misspell it. Okay, that's why the IntelliSense was not working. See, so you gotta take care of these things. So whenever there is a issue or there is an error while you're doing the lab, trust me, it is good. You learn a lot more when there is an issue. All right, so it is deploying. Let me quickly get back here. I click on the overview. I click here. Okay, let me get back here. It is. I think it has already deployed this index page here. If I can verify simply by clicking here. Right now it is still showing the default page. That's good. Let's get back here. Wait for it. While it is happening, meanwhile, let me try to save some time and get back here, click on Deployment Center and get the credentials for the FTP. This is the very easy and the best way to do your lab. So let me minimize this and try to open my FileZilla client. All right, I'm here. So this is the FTP point. I'm not doing anything. I'm just configuring FileZilla so that I can talk to the app services so that I can deploy my index.html. This is my username and this is my password. And if something you guys are missing, like if I'm fast, don't worry, this video would be published on YouTube. You can go back and check it out. And I can quickly connect. Okay. I'm able to connect. Let's get back here. It's still doing its thing. It's still deploying the index.html.zip that I have configured here. All right, while it is doing, I have to wait, so I can show you this meanwhile. If I go back to app services, we can cover the logs, right? What is log? Log is something which will help you in the governance, you know. Whenever you architect something, whenever you design something, there is always a part which is governance. So log will help you in governance when there is like two kind of logs, readme log or delete. As per your need, you can deploy. Read only, like everyone can read, no one can edit it. In delete, people cannot delete, but they can edit it. Okay, I think I closed it. No problem. Go back to this resource. Let me quickly check if this is done. I think this got stuck or something. However, we have responded with status 202, which seems good to me. Click again. Nope. All right, no worries. I'll save some time, and what I'll do, I'll utilize the FileZilla. And before I do that, I must show you the service logs, which is very important, I think, as per development point of view. Though I'm not a developer, but I'm just trying to learn as much as you or other people here. So these are the logs that we can enable on our app services. These are the file system logs, right? You can click on and you can have all different kind of log and different kind of levels. You need errors, warnings, information, verbose. You can have those logs enabled. So we do have this functionality, which is beautiful. We have log stream here that you can see the live log, what is happening. Okay. So let's get back to the, okay, it got stuck here. I'll try one more time and else I'll do the FileZilla. Okay. Let me go back to app services, click on the URL, and it's not happened yet. No problem. I'm gonna hit the FileZilla. You can see I'm connected to the root of the app services. This is the host. I showed you here. Come on. Under deployment center, when you hit the FTP, right here, this is the endpoint that you're connecting to. This is the username. This is the password. However, you can configure your own as well. So let me go back to the FileZilla. I have put down the host name, username, password, and I've connected here. Now, this is the hosting HTML, which is default page of your app service. If I click here, the default page comes. This is the hosting.html. What I can do, I can simply delete this one. Hopefully the backend process will not give me any more issue than it has already done. All right, now if I can move this index.html that I've created and it says transfer is finished. Let me minimize this and try to refresh it if it give me right here. This is Azure Talks demo done by Pachehra. Cheers. So this is my page. This is not what I have published through this SSH. I don't know why it's taking time, but that's how you publish it. For more information, when we're gonna update this video on YouTube, I'm gonna share the link for the Microsoft documentation, which has all the information regarding this. Okay. All right. I think we have covered what we planned. Actually, we have covered more than what we planned in VM creation or web app creation. And now I would request Ashish and Vipin, if something is missing, please add on. If not, let's take it further to the quiz. I think that's the next part.
Yes, but let me share my screen and okay, just give me a moment. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, share. Okay. Okay, so as we are done for demo, now before we go for quiz, I would like to announce this job opportunity. Actually, we planned it for later, but let's get started with this. So we kind of started with this thing. We already have a job portal. If you are already part of our community, then you might be aware of that. And this is our Azure Top Jobs portal, having more than 3,000 people over there. If you want to join, you can go there and you can join this. I'm going to post this link in the chat as well. And we have a lot of people, from the various different teams. They share their referrals, and we have some exclusive referrals as well. So that's what we are going to announce going forward. We are trying to, we have a lot of friends working there, and they see that our opportunity, our community has a lot of people who are having the good skill set in terms of Azure. So they want to try to get some exclusive referrals from our community, and that's what we are going to announce. And starting with Arun. So Arun is going to share some job opportunity that is there, and that is exclusive for our community. For the priority will be given if you apply using Azure Top referrals, and of course further process will be there, although the standard company process. Why don't you talk about this, Arun? Please go ahead.
Absolutely. Is my screen is on share or is it yours?
You can.
No, I don't need to. I don't need to. It's fine.
Okay, so let's do one thing. You talk about the the opportunity, and then later on the details you can post in the chat, right?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So as Ashish mentioned, so this is for all the viewers and all the Azure Talk members and all your friends. This is something which is the benefit of being a part of such a huge community where we are discussing all those topics on every day, all those issues every day. So this will help us to recognize, and it's not like just a referral, there would also be a recommendation, how you guys perform in our Telegram group, how you're helping people, we all see it. Right? If there is an extraordinary person or a guy who is going all the way to helping people and sharing all the knowledge, then I already know, people already know that this is the guy, this is this kind of guy that we're looking for. So this is an opportunity for everyone in the Azure Talk group who is participating, and I would encourage you guys participate as much as you can. So the opportunity that Ashish mentioned is the opportunity with the rec space where I'm working right now. It's been 3 years I'm working with the rec space. Prior to that, I worked with a lot many organizations like HCL, Dell, iGate, Hanu, and trust me, this is one of the best company to work with. And we have the opportunity for Azure Solutions Architect. Okay, and before I talk about an opportunity, I would also like to announce, which is like, what is Rackspace? I think, I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware of Rackspace. Rackspace is a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for public cloud MSPs, consistently featuring in the top 100 best place to work. Right, so this is one of the best company to work with, especially if you are looking your career in the cloud. Because we are not only covering the Azure, we have AWS, GCP, private cloud, Alibaba, whatever is there in the market, we are supporting it. We are working on that. Okay, so it's a golden opportunity, it's a wonderful opportunity. What we are looking for people who has knowledge and experience in field of public cloud. So we're talking about Azure. So this is Azure Public Cloud, but if you are coming from AWS or GCP, you can still go ahead and share your resume, but make sure you are eligible. You fulfill the prerequisite. Prerequisite is what? Prerequisite is like you have good experience, you have good knowledge, you have like deep knowledge in components and the services of MS Azure. Experience working with cloud platforms in either an architecting or consulting or even engineering role, but with a great knowledge, with an interest in technical pre-sales experience, demonstrating customer facing commercial and technical capabilities. These are not required, but these are preferred, not essential, but preferred about technical pre-sales thing that I've mentioned, right? Comfortable sharing knowledge through both formal and informal methods with customers and other records. You must have experience with your experience like customer workshops, the workshops that we guys are running here. This is the community thing, the same kind of workshops we run with the customers, the RFPs, the RFIs. You must be comfortable engaging at all levels of customers' business, from working with senior leadership to guiding IT specialists and developers on building solutions. Broad technical background. And why I'm saying this? Because what happened when I announced the same kind of opportunity on the Telegram group, my inbox was flooded with all the resumes, whether you have a single year of experience, whether you do not even have experience, whether you belong to a different domain, you want to work in cloud. Everybody was sharing the resume for the cloud architect. What happens in such scenario? The person who is actually meeting the prerequisite, the person who is actually needing the architect role, the person who is actually deserving it, even his resume or her resume will fall in the spam. So I would request you and I will encourage you, if you think you have the caliber, if you think you have the knowledge, if you think you can do that, please share the resume. I'll share my email address. My LinkedIn link is already there. My YouTube link is already there. I'm also going to share my official email address that you can reach me, and I'll try to refer you guys and help you as much as I can. Well, thank you.
Yeah, Arun, and please post the details in the chat. The requirement that you have, the skills that you are looking for, so that people can go through it, and of course they can connect with you, whatever the medium you will prefer, email address or whatsoever. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Arun. Thank you so much. So, guys, this is a very nice opportunity. As Arun said, it's a very good company. You must be aware of that. The opportunity is really, really good. Cloud architect role, and it is exclusively for our community, where Arun will be trying to prioritize the profiles. Of course, the relevant profiles we are getting from the community, and we are announcing it from here. And going forward, we will try to align with such rules, and we will try to connect with different people. And if we have certain such openings, which can be referred from the community itself. Apart from the learnings, we can also help you to get the job, not only for architects. So we are also trying to get some fresher level jobs, intermediate administrator level jobs opportunity, and align these people with those options. Okay, we will keep talking about this and going forward discussions. Now let me go here and let's talk about the next thing, which is our quiz. So the quiz is, you can access the quiz on this URL. We will be soon post let me post the URL on the chat as well. Which is C, and here it is. So you can scan the QR code or you can access the URL. It is open for next 10 minutes. So it is 9:45 India time. Exactly 9:55 India time it will be disabled. So go ahead and submit your responses. Submit your email address and your name and your organization name. Organization name is just for tracking purpose, in the sense, to highlight your visibility, right? You are doing your learning, it should be highlighted. So these data are shared with Microsoft when they are providing us the vouchers, so that they can actually share the information across your organizations. It is definitely going to help you or benefit you. So let's go ahead and attend the quiz. In the meanwhile, I'm watching the Q&A. If you're facing any kind of issues, I will definitely respond in Q&A. Let's go ahead. After quiz, we will be talking a little bit more about the winners of the previous session. So some of the information about quiz. Next session is 16th May in the same series, where we will be covering part 2 of the compute services, where we'll be covering containers, Azure functions, which are another compute services in Azure. So when you want to execute some application, you can use other compute, which is part of the same module. So that is on 16th. So we'll be announcing the winner there. If you have not registered yet, please go ahead and register. Each session, there are multiple sessions. For each session, you need to register on the Eventbrite. So it's not like you are registered for one session, then you'll be getting a notification for all the sessions. Eventbrite will. We were trying to find that kind of option, but it was not there. So you will have to register for individual sessions every date, because every date will be a new topic that we are going to discuss. It's not that we are going to duplicate the topic. So if you are preparing for the entire certification and you want to go through the entire syllabus, then you have to register for entire series. When you are doing the certification and when you are doing the learning, there is a initiative by Microsoft. Monthly, they are running a raffle where they are giving away one Surface Go laptop. So, if you go ahead and update your skills on LinkedIn, and to get the information, you can go to this URL. I'm just going to post this URL in the chat, and you can update your skills in LinkedIn mentioned in this URL, and then you can follow the instruction on this URL to update your skills and be eligible for the raffle, which they run every month. Very nice initiative by Microsoft to help you learn as well as to gain from it. Okay, so I'm just sharing this URL here. It's oops. Now, once we are done for the quiz, okay, so we have the requirement from Arun. Let me post it here. How really looking good in the chat, the way MS Team is having this chat feature. But let me put it here. Let's see how it goes. I'm posting it here, but we will be posting this information in our group as well. It's not coming well in this chat, but you can join our job group and you can get the same details. So just posting there. We are 3 minutes away from the completion. Vipin, you there?
Yes, Ashish. So in next 2 minutes, this quiz link would be disabled. This quiz link will be available for next 2 more minutes now. And post that once this quiz link will be disabled, you can announce the winners for previous 2 sessions. So today we are going to announce the 12 winners, 6 from AZ-400 series and 6 from the last session that we did for DevOps pipeline. So today we are going to announce 12 winner for Azure exam voucher as well as one for the book,
Yes.
which is authored by Ashish.
Yes. Here.
Okay, while it's silent, I just want to show the web app deployment is done. It got stuck. I just did it again, and if I click here on the web service, before I do that, shall I share my screen?
Yes, Arun, you need to share your screen. Right now it is my screen shared.
Let me quickly share while it is happening.
Okay.
All right, people, if you can see it, all the viewers, here we got stuck, if I go to my virtual machine where I was working, somehow this got stuck. So I did it again and it was giving me an error. There is an ongoing deployment. So what I did, I just waited for a minute and reapply the command. The only trouble is like the caps, I think, because this is bash. Bash is not like PowerShell. Yeah. So if I go back to the Azure portal and I click on the URL, it must say hello world. There you go. Earlier, if you remember, it was showing the hosting page, the default page of the app services. Then we use the FileZilla and put it our index page, which was showing the Azure Talk session, the demo session. And when we deploy with the help of CLI, the index.html zip file right here, now it is showing hello world. Just wanted to update. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, it gives the complete perspective. Okay, guys, so we are going to disable the quiz now. If time is over, so we will just disable the quiz now.
Okay. You can share your screen if there is something.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen now. So let me share my screen and okay, so the quiz link is going to be disabled and you should be okay. So now you won't be able to kind of submit your responses. Now let's go ahead and talk about few things before finishing today's session. So we have this winners. We have two winners. Yeah.
I'm keen to know who are the winners.
Yes, we are just going to announce these two winners, and today is special day. So today we are going to share 12 vouchers, 6 vouchers, and one special print copy of my book. So
that's just wow. That's wow. That's wow. Your copy, I want it.
Yeah, so this is the first session we are sharing it, and every session I'm going to share one copy of my book with the people. So let me first quickly go ahead and open the wheel of names. Okay, so this is the wheel of names. As you can see here, we are going to have the name of the people for whom we are going to get the. Let me go ahead and get the names. So I am going to post the names over here. So last time we were posting email ID. So we have got the feedback that email ID might be having some problem. So now onwards we will be sharing names. Now let's go ahead and start the role. And we'll be selecting one of the guy, and then we'll be selecting these people after the session. Okay, so we have this.
Kudos.
Let me go ahead and share, keep it there. So
congratulations. Yeah, Devdeep.
Yeah, so Devdeep is one of the winner from our AZ-400 series that we have just completed last month. Then these are the people who were selected from the AZ-400 series. Then we have another list of people for pipeline. Okay, Anuji. So you'll be getting another voucher. Okay. These are the people we are selecting for vouchers, and for AZ-400 we are selecting people for voucher. Okay, so Amit, congratulations.
So Ashish, these people will be getting the vouchers. Who will be getting your book?
Yeah, that will be the last lottery. Okay, so let's see. This is Puran. Congratulations, Puran. So far we have like 4 names. Let's see. We have 2 more names from this session. And let's see. All right. So Riyash is the fifth one. Now we have, oops, let me remove this and run it again. Now this is the last winner for this session. We have another set of 6 people. Okay, let's see who is the name. Okay, Indrajit. So congratulations, Indrajit. You are also going to get 1 voucher, Azure exam voucher, using which you can give the exam. And okay, so now we are going to remove these names. All right, and I'm going to put another set of people who participated in the quiz that we have in the previous session on pipeline that Deepak took. So
Yeah, before you do that, I must congratulate everyone who participated, all the winners, and do utilize your vouchers.
yes, do
Uh,
utilize your voucher. Do make sure you update skills on the LinkedIn. Do make sure that you participate in that raffle, which can give you a Surface Go as well.
yes, and while preparing, if you guys feel anything like this is something that I need to understand, or there is some kind of issue, share those queries on the group, on the Telegram group.
Right.
They are enormous people with enormous knowledge can help you out. Thank you.
Exactly. Right. Okay, so let's roll it again. So this time we are going to select another set of 6 people and 1 person for my book. So let's see. The first person for the voucher is Vinod. You are getting the voucher. Let me save the name and let me remove it from here, and then let's see the another name. There are some names here which were Michael. So there are few names I can see which were part of the previous raffle as well. So if at all they will be selected, unfortunately we'll be removing that name because we can give 1 voucher to 1 person. So yeah, just to make sure that it's a valid deal. Okay, Ravi Kasim. So Ravi Kasim. So this is the next one, and let's remove this. Now let's see. Okay. So this is Shekhar. So let's see. Now there's will be 5th. Okay. So we have Rohan Reddy. Congratulations, Rohan. So this will be now the last person for the vouchers. And this is, let's see. Okay, Amit. I think it is it. Let's see. Okay, so if at all there will be another duplicate name between 2 set, then we will be having extra person and we will be giving away to the extra person, just to disclaim, put a disclaimer there, because 1 person having 2 vouchers doesn't make sense. Okay, now this is the final raffle for my book. Let's see. Oh, Puran, so you got the voucher in the previous session and you got the book in the this session.
I must congratulate you, Puran. I wanted the book, but you got it. Do
right.
Utilize your voucher then.
Exactly. Yes. So let's we are almost at the time. Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for for participating in the event and be a very good support for us. And we will just quickly cover it because we are almost 4 minutes up. So this is Arun. Arun LinkedIn profile, YouTube URL is there. Arun frequently post his his perspective on various Azure services, the hands-on labs on his YouTube. But go there, subscribe to it. You will get a lot of content over there related to Azure or architecture in general. This is myself, Ashish Raj. You can connect with me LinkedIn. That is my website. And along with that, you can see all the URLs. The first URL is for registration of the series. If you are not yet registered, please go ahead and register again. Yeah, again, keep saying that. These two groups, Azure Talk is our Azure group, DevOps Pro is our DevOps group. You can join, both of them. You can post issues, related to DevOps in DevOps group, issues related to Azure in general, architecture, development, infrastructure, whatsoever it may be. In Azure Talk, we are there, in both the groups. We can be able to help you there. That is the last URL you can see is our Azure Talk YouTube URL. This recording will be hosted there. Along with that, all the previous training that we have, it is already hosted there. So you can watch our training on Azure AZ-104 if you are for infrastructure, AZ-900 for fundamentals, AZ-400 for DevOps, Azure DevOps. Now this AZ-204 we are doing for Azure Developer, and going forward we are going to complete this session over a period of next few months. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much for joining the session today. Thank you so much, Arun. Thank you so much, Vipin. Let's looking forward for the next session. And thank you so much for staying with us for this, for the last. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Be safe. Keep learning. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.